Hello, my name is Michael O'Keefe, aka The Movie Wizard. If you enjoy this interview and want to hear more top-notch film industry conversations, please press the thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell to stay in the know. This interview will be all about Hellraiser, but I wanted to ask first, how was the Fabio Frizzi concert, and has this inspired you to do anything?
The Fabio Frizzi concert was fantastic. Of course, I've known his music. He has made major contributions to the same world that I hover around in, which is sort of the darker side of things. Mm-hmm. And this whole movement, I should say, this whole movement of audiences being interested in seeing live performances of the score to the picture is somewhat new. And
John Carpenter does it.
Yeah, John Carpenter I saw did it. He toured with his band that included his son.
Oh.
And Fabio, as well as Claudio Simonetti.
Yeah, he does it too.
Yes. Have been touring their bands, so that they could play live, in movie theaters. This was in the Egyptian I saw Fabio.
Oh.
It's a nice size theater, but not that monstrously big.
No, really?
Yeah, and so it's inspired me to want to do the same for sure.
Because I was up here on Canada Day, and I was talking to your brother Rusty, and he said Halloween 2018 in LA, you're doing a concert.
Yeah, that's the idea. The idea is doing a concert in LA in 2018. The main difference between them and me is that they're known for scoring films with small electric ensembles.
Yes.
Right. Again, with Claudio and Goblin, it was a sextet or a quintet. I can't remember. Same thing with Fabio.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small group of people. It's manageable. You can tour with like you can tour with a rock band. What I do in most 90% of my horror films, sci-fi thriller films, whatever, is orchestral, so it requires a much larger group. Mm-hmm. That's why it's costly to pull this thing off. In LA this Halloween there was talk about doing the Hellraiser score live to picture.
Oh wow.
But we weren't certain how many tickets would be sold, and if it required that a certain amount get sold just to break even.
Yeah.
And so I was just a little reluctant. I thought, you know what, if I'm going to lose money on this, I'd rather lose it on a concert of more than one score,
right.
and have it just music, not music to picture.
No music to picture.
The thing I'm going to
Too distracting?
No, I don't, the concert of Hellraiser would have been just viewing that one movie and hearing that one score. If I do a concert of my stuff, I get to do selections from a variety of movies. That's exactly what John Carpenter did.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Goblin did. Goblin didn't do the score to one movie.
It was all over the place.
Fabio did the score to one movie.
The Beyond.
Yeah, The Beyond.
Oh, okay.
I don't think Goblin did the score to one movie.
Fabio does both, actually. He does The Beyond sometimes, and then he does what the other guys do.
Right, which is a combination of scores from different movies, right. Well, that's what I want to do, a combination of scores from different movies. And so to that end, I'm going to wait for a year and do this thing next Halloween in LA.
That's exciting.
And I will project like John Carpenter did. John Carpenter did with his band selections, or he'd do an extended suite of sorts of music from one movie. and he would project images from that movie. Well,
Right.
I'll project images for sure.
Oh, you'll project images.
Oh, I'll
okay.
definitely project images.
Oh, okay.
I just won't. I won't run the movie in real time.
Oh.
It'll be a montage of images.
Well, you know what? I'm going to try to make it.
What's that?
I'm going to try to make the concert.
You're going to try to make the concert?
I'm going to try to.
Oh, I'd love to have you there.
That would be.
You better
blast.
come. You better. It'll be a blast. It's going to be a big orchestra choir. I'm going to try to get some of the stars on some of these movies there. Like maybe I can get Doug to come.
Get Doug.
Yeah.
I feel like he would come. Because he lives in the States, right?
He lives in the States. He doesn't live in L.A., but he lives in the States.
Okay. The score for Hellraiser is unforgettable. However, you're not the first one slated to do it. Please tell us who was first and how you got the job.
The first person slated to do it was actually a group called Coil, and they were friends of Clive's from England, sort of pioneers in the industrial ambient music world, and fantastic in their own right, and would have done a remarkable, or actually did do some remarkable music for it, which was never used. Why was it never used? It was never used not because they weren't really good. It was never used because the gentleman, Tony Randall, who directed the second movie, Hellbound, at that time was head of post-production at New World Pictures, the company that released Hellraiser. He was sent over to represent New World Pictures to check up and see how things were going, because the whole film was shot in England. When he arrived, one of the things that came up, I think fairly quickly into hanging with Clive, was who's going to do the score for the movie. And Clive said, well, I've got this group called Coil, and this is who I'd like to have do it. And Clive said, and Tony said, well, have they ever scored a movie before? And apparently they hadn't. And, Tony and I had gotten to know each other because when I finished at UCLA, where I was still a student at UCLA, he was just starting at New World Pictures. Oh. And he heard about me from some of the students that had graduated from UCLA that had either used me on their own short films or had worked on short films that I had scored. So they told him about me, and so he was interested in who is this guy at UCLA who can seem to get, at this time, this is pre-synth. There's no home synth studios except for a handful, because the technology was so expensive. It was new, and it was real expensive to have in a home situation. Universities and specific studios had the equipment, but the individual couldn't afford it. So it was all about, back in those days, who could get an orchestra score for no money. Basically, that was it.
Yeah.
Who can make it sound big,
right,
without the company having to spend any money, and that became my MO. And so Tony hired me. He checked me out by having me score the trailer to a movie called The Philadelphia Experiment.
Okay.
And he liked what I did. They had no money. It was like, here's $200.
Oh.
That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then I did like 2 or 3 New World small pictures, and on the basis of him being happy with that, he then recommended me to Clive. Clive was like, well, this is the guy that just did Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2. And, that's not the score that I want for my movie. Yes, it's a horror movie, but I don't want this score to be a thriller, shrieker, slasher type score.
Right.
This is a sick romantic movie, and that's what I'm kind of looking for. So I think Clive was initially reluctant to bring me on. But Tony said, listen, if you're going to have someone to do a horror score, they need to know how to write the picture. They need to know that at certain moments on the screen, the music needs to do certain things.
The foreground, the background, all that.
Foreground, background, catching cuts. I mean, in horror films, if someone is murdering somebody, you know, a knife comes up in the air and down it goes. If the music does its shrieking sound 3 seconds late, then all of a sudden a horror film becomes a comedy. If it's too early, comedy. And so you have to know drama, that particular way of handling drama. And I guess Coil, because of their background in doing more ambient music, the idea of having to adjust their music to hit moments in the movie was something they weren't comfortable with. I get it, you know. It's something they could have learned, but ultimately, thank the Lord, Clive decided he'd give me a shot.
It's interesting you say that because on the audio commentary track, which I listened to on this box set that I'm pointing to right now, Clive Barker said, "You, Christopher Young, were the most important collaborator on this film."
He said that?
How does that make you feel?
Clive said that? Really?
Yeah, he actually said that, yeah.
You know, well, Clive, you're back in Los Angeles now. I've heard you're not very well. Right now, I'm thinking of the great fortune I had in that one moment in time, our paths crossing. That he would have singled me out to that degree. I think he's making a mistake. You know, let's face it, Doug Bradley, you know, and Ashley Lawrence were, you know, critical in getting this thing rolling, and he himself, the director, the writer. The music played an important part in that movie, so I hear.
Especially in horror movies in general.
Yeah, in general, you know, music plays an incredibly important part. Without good music, chances are a horror movie will be horrible. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, so that somehow magically I tuned into him, and what he was looking for is amazing. Because we didn't know each other. He was overseas most of the time. He was in England, I was in LA. But he told me, he directed me so well. And the movie was the perfect movie for me at the time. It allowed me to not just write scary music for the sake of writing scary music. As you know, so much of Hellraiser rests, I guess, in it being a sick romance.
Right.
You know, we understand and we pity, I guess, Julia, you know, to a certain degree for being so love lost and so
submissive and
so obsessive, with this evil dead man that she had an affair with. We understand that, and so the score somehow had to reflect that. Again, that Clive would pick me out. I am extremely honored.
I could see you were really taken aback when I told you that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to even try to find words. I'm trying now, but I'm not succeeding.
Okay.
Because it is something that it is overwhelming. It's something I'm going to have to carry around for a bit.
Okay.
And just let it seep inside, because I've never had a director say that to me. Never. And
while he didn't say it to you directly, he told the whole world.
He told the whole world, but, you know, Lord knows.
I wanted to tell you something else I learned on the this Blu-ray stuff is you are, someone said, a devout Christian.
Well, yes, I'm a devout Christian. Yes, I am a Christian for sure.
And this
not a born again one. I was born into Christianity,
okay.
and I've lived with the church and my belief of in God being a guiding light throughout my entire life.
So
and indeed, my time in church, specifically the church choir, and having access to all this miraculous music, it guided me and definitely formed my musical brain, molded it at a very early age in the best of ways.
I just found the sounds have this kind of contrasting effects to the images. And do you think this could be at all because of your faith?
Say this one more time. What's your question?
The sounds have a sort of contrasting effect to the images. And do you think this could be attributed to your faith?
The sounds have a contrasting images? What do you mean?
Contrasting effects to the images. Like it's like, it's not like a heavy metal band or
no.
It's like you said, like a sick romance.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
I would have to say
the orchestral score, it has this almost benevolent thing to sort of balance out the horrific.
I guess you would say that if I was a heavy metaler or I might be more inclined to celebrate all the time and all these in being able to promote the dark side, in a joyous manner. But because I am, I do believe in God and spent a lot of time, as I said, and have spent lots and lots of time thinking about the significance of being someone who is, passionate about Christianity, working on so many horror films. It's not, it's something I have to struggle with.
Right. Yeah, and I was wondering, as a Christian, what do you say to other creative people who feel like the genre conflicts with their morality? What do you tell them?
I've met a lot of composers who refuse to do horror films for that very reason, and I'm not going to try to talk them into doing horror films. That I would never do. I can understand why they'd walk away from them because of their faith. However, having said that, the one thing that can be said about horror films is that if you're a composer who's interested in all things sort of contemporary, in terms of using the orchestra or whatever media you're using in a more experimental manner, not having to worry about selling pretty tunes and pretty chord progressions to make everyone feel pretty warm and fuzzy.
Right.
The wonderful thing about horror films is the music can be really aggressive, colorful, and contemporary in terms of incorporating isms borrowed from, the 20th century classical music world. So that I couldn't, I love that music. I've always loved, the experimental side of classical or concert music, and hey, listen, I was raised on Ligeti and Penderecki and Lutoslawski and Xenakis and all this cluster stuff.
The cluster stuff.
And I love that. I truly love that. And so being able to utilize that language and have it performed was exciting. And horror films, thrillers, they're the only pictures that really allow for that kind of language, or used to.
Yeah. So Clive said on this commentary track that he was looking for kind of a Dario Argento vibe for Hellraiser, meaning kind of nightmare-esque with this void of logic. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I was wondering, do you like to watch these Italian horror movies? And besides the original The Haunting, which I know is like your favorite.
Yeah, Haunting's my favorite.
What are some of your other favorite horror films to watch?
I got to tell you, I'm not as big in the Italian horror film scene as I should be. I do love what Goblin and Fabio have contributed. It's unique, it's special. To me, again, being a composer, the thing for me that's most exciting about the films is how the music is used. I like Dario Argento's movies, of course. I would love to be the composer, a composer on one of his movies, but it wasn't meant to be. Goblin and it did a brilliant job, and I wouldn't want to step on their feet at all. But my favorite horror films, therefore, are probably go back a ways. The Universal ones. Those are the ones I was raised.
Frankenstein
on.
and the Mummy.
Yeah,
Dracula.
I would say of the early Universal films, probably The Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh yeah,
yeah, is probably
James
up there.
Whale.
Yeah, James Whale. And anything James Whale did, I'm up there with. Let's see here. I guess I said The Haunting is my favorite. The original black and white version. Some of my other favorite ones usually are in the ghost story world, where the person is being affected by something unseen. I do love the movie. What's it called? Wicker Man. Wicker Man I find incredibly creepy.
Right.
That's wonderful. It's a compilation of short stories.
Oh, is it
the black and
Black
white
Sabbath?
No. This
it's
goes
the
way.
Bible
This is
It's something else.
This goes way back into it's a 40s movie.
Is it the one with the mannequin? Dark of the Night, or
no? This is the one about a guy who has. It's about dreams within dreams.
Dreams within dreams.
Dreams within dreams, and it is called.
So the soundscape of the first two Hellraiser movies are well defined, and you said last year there wasn't a unified sound for the Nightmare on Elm Street series, which you worked on as well. How do you do a unified score for a horror series?
Well, it starts with having the same. You mean from movie to movie to movie? We'll start with use the same composer.
Okay,
that's the best way to start doing it. John Williams and Steven Spielberg created a unified sound in the Indiana Jones movies because it's the same composer from one to the next. The thing about the Nightmare movies is you would have to help correct me on this.
Sure.
But I don't believe any composer ever returned.
No, that's correct.
Okay, so I did two. I left.
Angelo Badalamenti.
Yes, so it was a series of composers that all had a different take on the picture, as they would. Mm-hmm. So there was no unified voice. Mm-hmm. Charles Bernstein came up with the definitive theme, which I believe was used by other composers later on, or the motive was used. Mm-hmm. It returns in some of the later movies. I'm not that familiar with the scores from the later movies. But suffice to say, when I was brought on board to do Nightmare 2, I was distinctly told not to utilize any of Charles Bernstein's score or the sonority, because he did a synth score. I did an orchestra score. Mm-hmm. So I was, in that case, I was told not to follow in the footsteps of my predecessor. No one on the Hellraiser series, I think, was told not to follow in the footsteps of what I'd set up. Now, I don't know the other scores as well as I should, but
I have a question about that.
I'm guessing that they were encouraged to continue, if possible, to use my themes. Is that true?
They used it in 3. I think that's about it.
In 3, that's it?
The opening of 3. But
okay.
You said that the music budget was very small on Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth, and that this stupid Motorhead video there's that stupid Motorhead video along with more popular contemporary tracks.
There's what?
There's this stupid Motorhead song.
Motorhead song?
Hellraiser.
I don't even know that.
Motorhead, right?
I know the name Motorhead. I don't know his music. Their music.
There's this stupid heavy metal song. It's really kind of like AC/DC.
Okay.
Schlocky. stupid
schlocky?
vibe. And
Okay.
they have kind of like pop hits in 3, which I thought
Oh,
was really
really?
out of place after 1
That
and 2.
pop hits in 3. So yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't seen any of these movies.
I was wondering, what would it take you to watch this terrible Hellraiser movie? From like what would it take for you to watch the terrible Hellraiser movies from 3 on to 9?
3 on the 9. What would it take me
like
to?
a big cash payment or?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
You know, if there was a reason to, if I got a call from Clive, of course I'd watch them. If I got a call from anyone connected, say, we'd love to get your comments on them for the box or something like that, then I would watch them.
But there's no good reason.
But there's
to, really.
that, you know, I stay away from them as a general rule.
It's a good call.
What's that?
Really,
I mean,
they're
well, yeah,
dumb,
I don't
especially
watch.
Bloodline.
I don't even
No
watch one.
disrespect to your friend who did 4, but Bloodline is really stupid.
Bloodline is really stupid.
Have you heard of the premise?
Which one is Bloodline? Is
Number
that
4.
Number 4. No, I don't even know. What's that? That's not the outer
It's in
space
outer
one.
space. Pinhead in space.
Whose idea was that?
It was pretty dumb. It's like the year 2250, and then they look at the guy who created the puzzle box, and back in like 1600s France. So there's like this, or 1700s France. So there's this 500-year gap. So Pinhead is going after the long lost descendant of the guy who created the puzzle box. It's really dumb.
It's really dumb. That's the curse.
Anyways,
When someone says an idea is dumb,
yeah,
that's bad news.
bad news. So I got 2 more questions. So they say that it's a 50-50 split between sound and sight in sound and visual in film. However, horror is known many great soundtracks. Do you feel like music has a special relationship with horror specifically?
Do I think music? Yeah. You pointed out earlier that, and I was lucky enough to hear that Clive felt that the score helped define the picture. In horror films, have you seen a horror film without music? I mean, have you seen like a work print of any of these movies?
No.
Okay, it's
Pretty rough, huh?
Well, it's different.
It's different.
I'm going to say it's different. I'm going to have to say that we've talked about my feeling that I've spent perhaps way too much time doing horror films and thrillers and genre pictures in general. And that very well could be the case. But I must say that I've worked on films of all shapes and sizes. I've done everything but an animated film.
Right.
Comedies, romantic comedies, black comedies.
You did Tyler Perry, right?
Tyler Perry, yeah, comedy, yeah, that's right. Comedies, straight romantic movies like Sweet November with Charlize Theron. And the music, there's nothing in many ways more rewarding than writing music that causes a viewer to cry. The right music in the right moment in the right movie, and what do you have? You have a room full of sobbing audience members.
Yeah,
that's a real high. I've been to previews of films that were romantic movies that I did the score on and watched the audience cry at moments, and the music was playing, and I kind of in my heart knew that so much of those tears probably could be attributed to the music being appropriate. Having said that, there is something extremely rewarding about writing music and for films in which the music is supposed to scare the living daylights out of or bring a sense of indescribable mystery to a moment, and that's what horror movie music does the best. And so those moments I'm actually probably the proudest of. Not when I'm really supposed to be scaring the audience, but rather introducing the audience to the world that the movie's supposed to be coming from, that is not terrifying but more mysterious.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. So I know we got one more question. I know you feel a little pigeonholed as a horror music guy,
right?
And this interview certainly will help change that. But I'm giving you a chance at the end. So if you had a chance to be known for something different, like let's say you got to do it all over again, and you get to pick the genre you'd be known for,
funny.
What would it be?
Well, it would have to be. It's a great question, really.
Nice.
Because I'm proud of the music I've written.
Yeah.
I like having had the opportunity to write complex, massive, aggressive, dark, thrilling, and dramatically succinct music. And I couldn't walk away from that, because that kind of musical language I do love. Having said that, I think every composer lusts privately to be able to have the opportunity to write music that will uplift the listener and take them to places that I don't want to say warm and fuzzy, but enlighten them in the best of ways. And as much as I love my work in horror films, it doesn't allow for that as a general rule. There are happy endings in horror films, and those have been great moments for me, moments where good wins out over evil.
Yes.
And the music gets to acknowledge that. The best example of that is the film I did called Bless the Child, where the end credits for that are one of my favorite end credit music, because it was all about God conquering evil.
Yes.
So, being, as we mentioned earlier, so this guy who does believe in God and has always been uncomfortable with being super horror-headed, I would have to say dramas. Everyone loves a great drama. Everyone loves and talks with such fervent passion about films like Gone with the Wind, To Kill a Mockingbird,
stuff like that.
Stuff like that. These are the scores that have had. These are the movies that have had scores written by composers that they're generally best remembered for. Because there's a much bigger audience for dramas, and really good ones, than there is for horror films. And part of me wants to write a tune, as I mentioned before, that everyone can get in their head and carry around with them, and it brings a smile to their face, because it talks about this affirmation of life. And do you understand what I mean here?
I understand what you mean, yeah.
I mean, I'm not pissed off that I've done horror films. Don't misunderstand me.
No.
I'm just saying that there's only so much that they can achieve.
It's a niche market.
It's a niche market. And I adore the language of music that horror films allow a composer to work in. And I would never walk away from it. I will not spit on the scores that I've written because they were written for horror films. I'm proud of them. I just wish that, because I'm such a tune lover, I love great tunes. I love the scores for those movies. Those two is an example. But there's an endless stream of movies I could mention. And I think every composer longs to write a tune that can be remembered. And let's face it, horror films, as a general rule, are not known for their awesome melodies,
Except for Hellraiser.
Hellraiser's got a nice tune, I guess.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris.
You're very welcome.
All right.